Welcome, everybody. I am Mike Letchin, and welcome to Software-Defined versus Storage Appliances, getting the best of both. I am sitting here with some great colleagues, and we're going to go into what software-defined can mean to you as a company, as well as to ways to make it easier, what you need, how it means in the market, and all sorts of other things. So first off, just a quick hello to the guys that are here with me today. I've got Henry Balthazar from 451. Hey, Henry, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Good. And then Bill Hansen from Lenovo.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, it's nice and early on the West Coast and getting there on the East, so this will be a good time to go through all this. So, as I mentioned, I'm Mike Letchin. I'm the field CTO with Nexenta, and I'm going to kind of guide us through this process today and the journey as we talk about how software-defined and storage appliances can all kind of blend into being what is really needed for today's enterprise. So we'll have some quick introductions, as you've seen. Then we'll go into some of the challenges that you're going to see in the enterprise market today. Henry's going to touch on those and tell us kind of what people are seeing in the market, so you know that you really are matching up to other people out there. A lot of these environments are very similar, and we see a lot of the same pain points across different verticals, across different segments, and it might really apply to you, and hopefully something will hit home. From there, we'll talk about the Lenovo DX 200N, and Bill will give us a little more detail on that. And then going into why that really matters, where we can use it, where it fits in your environment. Before we jump into showing you kind of some of the ease of use of this solution, why it really matters, how it fits on those use cases, and what we can do. So wrapping up with a little bit of Q&A from there. So I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Henry and let us go right into kind of some of those challenges and see what we think.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks for having me today. As I said, my name is Henry Balthazar. I'm a research director of storage for 451. I've been covering storage for the better part of 20 years now. I think storage is a very interesting market because we're always seeing new disruptions, new technologies, while still dealing with a lot of the same conventional challenges we've always had. I think now is a very interesting time because at this point, a lot of people have come to the realization they can't just do business as usual. They need to start thinking about new ways of dealing with these problems because when we're looking at where we're at today, we're really in an unsustainable type of situation. And when we go through my slides we're going to talk about for today, first section of my talk, we're really going to be focusing on what type of challenges we're seeing in the enterprise in terms of need for being able to deal with high growth, also growing needs for having improved data protection and things like that. Another thing we're also going to be talking about is about the changing demographics that we're seeing within the IT staffing landscape. We're seeing in that type of area, we're definitely seeing more of a surge in generalists entering the market. So as we start seeing some of these transition points come into play, some items such as ease of use become much more important for customers to have. The second half, what we'll be talking about later, is what type of use cases are going to be important when you start looking at your storage systems, and also taking a quick look at what are some of the feature requirements you should be thinking about for upcoming purchases. So when we're looking at enterprise storage challenges today, really, it comes down to the first problem, which is a problem we've had for a very, very long time. Data growth at most organizations is simply outpacing budget growth. And really, when you start looking at factors such as compliance and the need to extract better business value out of your data, more and more companies are trying to retain as much data as possible, which is compounding the problem. So unless we start making changes in terms of building and using more efficient technologies, we're going to have these problems where data growth is really going to quickly overgrow what you have in terms of financial resources. Another key thing to look at is what's happening to your client base. A lot of your clients' expectations, both for provisioning and resiliency, are going up. It's no longer good enough for them to have a daily backup. They need to have much more granular data protection because people aren't willing to lose work. Also, people want to be able to launch applications much more faster because they want to be able to extract business value as quickly as possible. As I mentioned earlier, we're also seeing a composition change in terms of the IT professional population. While a lot of large companies still have big populations focused on specialists, we envision seeing more and more generalists entering the market, and because of that, we have to have tools that are more intelligent and tools that make it easier for our customers to do day-to-day management. Finally, we're also seeing a change in the application paradigm. We do believe it's still going to be a lot of conventional application growth, like relational databases, email, and things you already have. But when you start looking into the future, there's going to be more cloud applications. There's going to be more big data type applications. You'll also see more mobile applications being deployed. And a lot of these new technologies, such as containers, are going to create demands, are going to push stronger demands on your infrastructure in terms of the need to scale and the need to respond faster. When we're looking at primary storage pain points, it's a lot of what we just talked about earlier. The number one problem still continues to be data capacity growth, though we're starting to see less people choosing that as a top answer when they're filling out our most recent surveys. As I mentioned earlier, data protection is becoming, the expectations for data protection are definitely going to become more stringent. Even when we look at things like non-critical test dev type workloads, more and more customers want to have very fast recovery of that because, again, they're not willing to lose work and they need to be able to leverage these technologies quickly to find answers to what they're trying to look for in terms of maybe writing queries or testing builds, software builds. Another key aspect, as we mentioned, is the high cost of storage. That's where I start seeing new opportunities for appliances and also for software-defined storage coming into play, where they're doing a better job of leveraging x86 hardware and simplifying things for more faster deployments and also time to value. Another key area that we're going to start seeing is, as I mentioned, the growth of new applications. We'll talk about this a little bit more in depth when we get to the workload section, but to me, it's not just the new fancy stuff. It's the fact that customers want to be able to launch conventional applications faster. So if they want to start a new database really quickly, they don't want to go through the standard procurement processes that have really crippled and slowed down people in the past.
So Henry, you're saying new applications, meaning things like the latest database stuff, all away from the standard COP stuff, not the standard off-the-shelf stuff we're so used to, on that it's not Exchange, it's not standard just a VM, but actual, the new, as things are getting developed. That's what you mean by new applications?
When we say new applications, in the context of this slide, and as we'll show more in the use case slide, yes, the new applications are interesting and coming into play, but you still have to be able to accelerate your provisioning for existing applications. So there's a lot of cases where people want to be able to start a SQL server really fast. Instead of going through the old way of doing things in terms of provisioning a server, provisioning storage, and all those aspects, people don't want to go through that anymore. They want to just be able to have that resource on demand and make things more service-like. So when we talk about new applications, I'm not just saying it's new applications that are entering the market, it's the fact that people want to start their conventional applications faster too, so they can start either in some scale-out type use cases if you're doing business intelligence, or other use cases that may be related to verticals.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks. Great. Going to the next slide, in terms of talking about, as I mentioned earlier, most organizations are dealing with massive surges in terms of the storage they have to manage. And in our latest survey, we saw that respondents on the median for the respondents is 28.3% annual growth, with the median of 23% for that population. When we start looking at this, 28% is clearly a lot of growth for a lot of organizations, but we're not seeing budgets anywhere near that type of growth. So when we start looking at this, even though we see price of disk dropping, we see price of some of the commodity hardware dropping, unless we start doing a better job of reducing cost, a lot of organizations are quickly going to be overrun in terms of the burden.
I guess these companies are no different than we do ourselves. I mean, we look at it for a while. We used to think a 16 gig iPhone was going to be more than enough capacity. And now, if I put a 16 gig iPhone in now, I'm going to be struggling to make sure I put everything on it. I think it's no different. We're seeing that same amount of growth, that 25% growth year over year. It's very similar for us as people as it is for those companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that growth is not going to go away, right? For some of those use cases, a lot of that's unstructured data. As people start getting deeper into analytics and business intelligence tools, there's going to be more temptation to hold on to larger repositories of that data. So unless we start doing a better job of that, that's a important data stream that could be valuable to your business going forward. In terms of what's going on, in terms of how people are looking at changing things, software-defined storage has definitely been an area of innovation we've been watching for a few years now. In our latest survey, the percentage of people that said they had it in use was up to 45%, which is quite high for this technology. And if you start looking in terms of plans over the next 2 years, it's clear that the majority of organizations will have software-defined storage within their environments over the next 2 years or so. Another key aspect to keep in mind when we start looking at what you're going to deploy and what types of capabilities you need to have, there's definitely really three things that we want to emphasize in terms of what you should be looking at. First off is capacity optimization. There's a large number of cool, interesting technologies that are available within these systems, tools like compression, deduplication, snapshots, and other types of data reduction type capabilities. The reason why you need this is you need to be able to expand the effective capacity of your storage systems. And if you can do that efficiently, you can slow down how quickly you need to add capacity or new systems going forward. And that's a key factor, because as soon as you start having to add new systems, that's where the cost usually goes out of control, both in terms of acquisition costs, and also in terms of management costs. So it becomes more and more important to make sure you optimize that efficiency to reduce your management burden.
So on that one, you think it definitely matters then to not only have those technologies that can shrink how much space you need, but also that your base system can expand to the size that you need, and that not have to replace it and not have to have a forklift upgrade every time you're doing something. Is that where you're going with that?
Exactly. That's where it's going to be important. I mean, we didn't put this on the slide here, but that's really about the scalability aspect, right? Because most organizations are not going to be able to scale up their headcount to be able to deal with this. So unless you can do a better job managing more with less, you're really going to have a big problem going forward. The next point that we should also talk about is the use of standard x86 server hardware. There's obviously a lot of really powerful benefits you get from the ever-improving commodity hardware that's out there in terms of x86 processors, and also on the SSD side, as we see flash getting cheaper and cheaper to deploy. So those are going to be important aspects to look at, and making sure that the people that you trust to provide you with hardware are always going to make sure that they're keeping up in pace with the latest and greatest from the commodity side.
So at that point, it's not just then though that they need to be keeping up on what they're saying, but you need to have that flexibility in your existing system to know that, hey, it's the latest SSD. I can put that in. We're going to support that. And I don't think you necessarily have always gotten that with some of the legacy storage solutions out there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting element that I try to emphasize as well, because part of the beauty of software-defined storage and going to that model is that ability to innovate at your own pace, right? If you think your organization could leverage the latest technology, whether it be its 3D crosspoints or some of the other things that might be coming into play in terms of flash capacity, flash drives, or new levels of flash, why not take advantage of that when you could use it and not necessarily wait for somebody else to get a blessing on that? So that's going to be an interesting offering in terms of how we expand beyond, how we able to leverage a lot of this new technology. And last, the other aspect is performance optimization. Though we're starting to see more primary workloads going to all flash arrays, there's still a much higher number of hybrids out there today, and there's a good reason to have hybrids. The disk, while flash is getting cheaper and cheaper, it's not as cheap as disk from a capacity point of view. So systems that can leverage these two mediums efficiently are really going to provide a great way to reduce your costs and also make sure that you're not wasting too much money on performance if you don't need it. Another key element we're looking at is how we're changing the environments and what are the things that customers worry about, or customers in terms of storage administrators, what they worry about. And really, even before reduced costs, which came in at number 2 at 23.7%, the number one goal for 2017 for the storage people that we've talked to was their ability to improve how fast they can respond to business needs at 29.3%. To me, that's a very key element, and that's something that really gets emphasized when you start looking at things like storage provisioning. It's no secret, a lot of the big boogeyman and the standard that people are trying to get to is people are trying to get their environments to become more cloud-like. And when I think about cloud and some of the cloud-like resources, it's really about being able to get instant provisioning and instant access to resources as quickly as possible. I think that's a big part of why people like cloud, in addition to some of the other things like the machine learning and other capabilities like that. On a pure infrastructure basis, it's about how fast you can deploy something and how fast you can start being able to leverage those resources quickly. And quite frankly, when I look at, this is a survey we did looking at enterprises, only about 24%, 27% for test dev were able to provision on a scale of minutes. To me, which would be more like a cloud-like standard. For most of these other organizations, though, it usually took potentially days or even hours to provision, which to me is too slow. unless we do a better job of automating and do a better job of making sure this provisioning is faster and more intelligent, there's going to be more incentive for people to go to cloud. So from our perspective, we're definitely advising customers to streamline their organizations and make sure that they're able to deliver services as quickly as possible. Another key element that's going to be important is ease of use. Ease of use, it's funny, 20 years ago when we were looking at products in testing labs, ease of use really didn't matter. But now we're at a point where it has to be very important, because more and more of the population is going to be generalists, people that are VMware administrators or cloud administrators, people that don't necessarily have years and years of training and certification and networking and storage and other environments like that. So when we start looking at how the population is changing, we know that it's going to be more and more important for customers to be able to gain rapid insights from their systems. It's going to be important for them to automate so they can reduce a lot of the minutiae of the day-to-day management. And unless we can do these things, we're definitely going to see IT organizations that are overrun by the burdens of their clients.
So thank you for that. I think that gave us a really good summary of kind of where a lot of the market is today. And one of the things I think was real prevalent there is some of the flexibility that software-defined can provide, but at the same point that there needs to be a good way to put that all together. And people still want to have that appliance model. And I think that's where Lenovo with the DX8200N really comes into play on this. So Bill, why don't you give us a little bit on that so we can learn from there?
Sure, that'd be great. Just a quick intro. So I'm a senior product manager and product planner at Lenovo. So really focused on software-defined storage, in this new paradigm to address these challenges and issues and things that Henry just went over. And as you mentioned, we've decided, we've got to have a nice, simple way to address these challenges. There's a lot of growth and budgets are constrained. Use the iPhone example. Our salaries aren't going up crazy at 25% every year either,
I heard $1,200 for the iPhone 8 though.
Is that what it is?
That's what I heard the other day. I was like, who's spending $1,200 for a phone?
That's right. My salary better be going up then. But as you can see, not just in the consumer space, but in the industry, budgets are constrained. We're trying to address these needs, and we've come up with an appliance solution to put it all together. We've taken our industry-leading hardware, our server hardware that you can get from Lenovo, our business capabilities and research and development, and then partnering with Nexenta, a leader in software-defined storage, to create a appliance that's easy to deploy, ready to go, configured, and we take a lot of the work out of putting it all together, so you don't have to build it yourself. And that's where, as you see here, the Lenovo Storage DX8200N, powered by NexentaStor, the software from Nexenta. Now, just a little overview of what the product is. It's a high-performance, scalable, unified block and file storage product. It utilizes our servers, our X3650 M5, if you're familiar, to build this appliance. And what's great is it's appliance that comes pre-configured, pre-integrated, pre-tested. So all that work that you'd have to do on your own to test it, to build it, to make sure you get the right parts and pieces, we've done that work for you. And it lowered really that total cost of ownership. Now you can hand this to a generalist, as was mentioned, and you can have it in and ready to go very quickly. Another key point is we provide a single point of contact for support. So if you do have issues, you don't have to go to the hardware provider, the software provider. It's very simple. We provide the support worldwide, regardless of whatever questions or issues you have. Now, it's a great solution in terms of cost as well. I mentioned TCO, but just in the CapEx of acquiring it, about a 50% lower CapEx. And that's coming from, again, we're using our standard server hardware. There's nothing proprietary here or unique like the older traditional storage arrays that you can find, which helps us hit that lower cost point and price point. And then you can scale. And as you can see here, up to 6.7 petabytes with this solution. Now, I stole a couple slides from our server buddies in my team in Lenovo. And just why are our servers awesome to build off of? Well, there's a few reasons. As you can see here, we've been rated for the last 4 years as #1 in x86 reliability. You can see how we sit there at that 1% number on unplanned downtime. It's where you definitely want to be the low number in this case, right? And you can see where we sit compared to others. So Lenovo servers are a fantastic platform to build your software-defined solution off of. And again, that reliability, which is just critical in today's environment. Next, the servers that we have are #1 in customer satisfaction. There's 22 different attributes that are rated and scored in the servers, and you can see on there the different things. Out of 21, we are #1 with our servers, from the acquisition price, the product design and features, our quality, our delivery, our sales, our responsiveness, all those critical attributes we score #1 on. So again, the server that we have is a fantastic platform to build off of.
So I think one of the things that jumps out at me on this one is that this isn't that legacy solution either. Some of the things that jump out are things like the online information is still #1, the social media support. So you're not getting that from a legacy older company that's out there doing it. You're really getting that quick response time, whether you want to do it over a traditional phone call, whether you want to do it over email, whatever it is, it's there, but it gets you that you see that you're new. But you've got that nice heritage out there from all the other parts.
That's right. You're exactly right. And we're really building on that because we want to be versatile and be able to meet the needs of these new challenges, because it does change. So that being said, so you take that fantastic platform and we've married it with the NexentaStor software, which is very robust and powerful by itself, and created this storage appliance. So you can get the benefits of software-defined storage, but have it in the easy-to-use, easy-to-deploy package of an appliance. And here, I've got a slide just talking a little bit about the benefits of NexentaStor. It's a great storage software. And as you can see, it's file and block. It services or provides all the protocols you really need, from NFS to SMB, your CIFS for file, your iSCSI, your fiber channel connectivity for block. It has all that in there. And with the image, you can kind of see the traditional high availability infrastructures. You got a 2-node active-active cluster addressing a number of JBODs, in this case, the Lenovo D3284 JBODs. So you can easily scale up to whatever capacity you need. Henry mentioned earlier, there's a lot of growth. And what's great about this solution, you can start from simple tens of terabytes, very small, and easily scale up to 6.7 petabytes of raw storage using this infrastructure and just scale up. It's really great that you can grow as you need and not feel like you've got to do a forklift change, as you mentioned earlier. It's very simple. Now, I won't go through all the features and functions of NexentaStor, but it is a full enterprise storage solution. So all the different things that you need, it has included. It's got the snapshotting, the cloning, the data storage reduction. It's all baked into this software. It's got the different RAID, the different high performance needs, the continuous asynchronization. It has all the things that you would expect from an enterprise storage solution. And maybe the most critical part is it also has the integrations you need, because we know you're working with lots of other applications and things out there like VMware. It's got VMware integration. It's got the quality of service features built into it. You're working with OpenStack, Cinder, different things. It has the integrations you need to be able to work in that environment, and then easily talk to the different applications and things you may be using.
Yeah, I think that integration point is where we really start seeing a lot of people needing to do things today. I mean, Henry talked about ease of use a little bit. Well, ease of use includes being able to tie into the solutions you're using and the products you're using. And if you're an OpenStack shop that needs to have Cinder drivers, well, we've had one out there for many, many years, I think since 2012 on it. If you need the VMware integration, we've got ways to access it, whether it's through a plugin, whether it's through vVols, things like that, that's all there. That integration, I think, matters a whole lot more nowadays than it used to. As much as the ease of use sometimes was, I didn't need to have a storage admin. Now it's, how does my other admin use the storage the way they need to use it?
I think you're right on. It's one thing to have the product itself be easy to use, but how to easily work with everything else is so important. And this has that feature, it has that capability, which is great. So I want to, with our DX8200N, we've built it so that it's very flexible and you can meet the different needs. I know we're going to go into use cases in a minute, but what's great is you can go from an all-disk configuration. Maybe you need a lot of storage. You're doing a lot of backup, file backup, even archive. What's great is you can scale to up to 6.7 petabytes of an all-disk storage solution with this. So you can do that flexibly by how you load the JBODs with drives. In this case, I've got a model with our D1212, which is a 2U12 drive. You can load it up with 3.5-inch drives, your largest capacity, and get a lot of storage and scale up as you need. Now, if you need more performance or you need to move that direction with your applications and your storage, you can have a hybrid config. You know, put a bunch of SSD in those JBODs and utilize them for higher performance, even all the way to an all-flash situation where you can just load all the storage with flash and be able to use that. Again, depending on your application and your workload, you can easily and flexibly adjust how you configure this DX8200N and the JBODs attached to it.
Yeah, I think the big key there is, while these are some good examples to see, we can go from that smaller scale, whether it's all flash or kind of an entry level, even or an SMB type solution that's in that smaller space, all the way through that large archive. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit later when we get into some of the use case stuff as well.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I hit on this earlier, and I put this slide in here on support. How do we service and support this DX8200N? It's really quite simple. You call Lenovo. I thought a really pretty slide would go well here, but guess what? It's really simple. And that's the point of the ease of use and what an appliance really brings. That's the differentiation. There's no setting up your own science lab in the back room and having a bunch of people work on it to make sure everything works right and figure out what's happened. If there's an issue, you simply call Lenovo. You don't have to call your provider of the hardware or the software or maybe your business partner. You can come straight to us and we're going to help you regardless of if it's hardware or software. Full solution support. So just remember that. That's a simple single point of contact being Lenovo.
So which the nice thing is that goes back to your earlier slide on that 21 out of 22 on it. That same support is what they're getting now on their storage solution that they were getting from just the servers.
That's exactly right. We're leveraging all that capability we have to provide that excellent support for this product. Now, just to summarize, the product we have, and it's in the market, it's been out there for a little bit now, is the DX8200N powered by NexentaStor, the Nexenta software we've talked about. It's TCO at scale, so that affordable innovation without boundaries. As I just mentioned, you can start small and you can scale because it's about solving that capacity growth challenge that was mentioned by Henry earlier. And this product allows you to do that. Implement with confidence. Have the trust because you're going with Lenovo, a proven #1 in reliability. You know, it gives you your licenses. It's an appliance that's fully integrated. It's been tested and configured for the most optimal situation. So that way you don't have to do all that homework and legwork to figure it out. We've done that for you. You can trust us and be confident in what you're implementing in your data center. And then lastly, I just hit on again, simplicity, that ease of use. As we move more and more towards generalists and things like that in the data center, we want a product that's simple, efficient, and fast so that you can actually reach those quick deployments that were talked about earlier. We've got to have a solution that really provides what you need easily and simply.
So I think we've talked through now kind of what the market looks like, what a solution could be that is going to give them what they need for that market. But I think we need to tie that in a little bit. That next place to tie that in is where some use cases are, what the market looks like for use cases right now, and then we can tie in how the two fit. So Henry, maybe you can go back a little bit and go back into some use cases for us and talk to us about the market there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, we should do that. So we start looking at use cases. What's interesting is even though we're definitely seeing a lot of new interesting things coming to the market like big data, SQL databases and things like that, a lot of those new things are actually at the bottom of the chart, right? When we asked respondents, storage respondents, what they had in their environments, only about 25% or so said they had big data. 25% or so had non-relational databases. So while a lot of these new use cases are coming and you have to be worried about them, really for today's solutions and what you're going to be deploying and what you're going to be using it for the next 2 or 3 years at least, it's really going to be a lot of the conventional applications. #1 being relational databases, where the vast majority of the people we surveyed are still using relational databases on their existing on-premise infrastructure.
You mean to tell me SQL Server hasn't gone away?
Nope, it's still going to be a big
surprising.
So SQL Server is safe. They're still going to be around for a bit. Email, probably a little less safe. we're definitely seeing more people looking at going to email for SaaS, but email still continues to be an important application that people need their storage to work well with, along with virtualized servers. If you start looking at the list, there's also other more things that should be familiar, like there's still physical, plain old non-virtualized servers out there that need to have storage capacity. So it's important to be able to have a storage system that could deal with them as well. And also, we're also going to see much more importance in terms of collaboration and messaging and other applications like SharePoint, where much more data is being aggregated. And we start looking at the new use cases. Big data adoption, as I mentioned, 25.4% had it in use at this point. But as you can see, the vast majority of people are starting to look at trying to do this within the next 2 years. So while it's probably not going to be the key point you build your storage decisions around today, it's definitely something to keep in mind in terms of how you're going to deal with big data, how you're going to deal with processing those workloads, and what's the long-term life cycle of that data after it's been processed.
Yeah, I know that was what we talked about a little bit before, Henry, was a lot of people look at big data and go, I've got to use this Hadoop for this processing, but they sometimes forget that they got to put that data someplace afterwards. And that's a lot of files, and there's a lot of file shares there, and that's really where this type of solution is a really good fit to give you that cost efficiency, the flexibility, the freedom to be able to put that second tier of your big data sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely as we go forward, as more data is being created at a much more rapid pace, it'll be more typical for people to see petabyte scale deployments where, before a petabyte was a lot of data. It's not so much a big unit of data now for many environments. Another key area that we're looking at for the future that's going to be important and something to be aware of is container storage. I've definitely seen more traction and more people asking about it, but to be frank, a lot of the deployments we hear about, a lot of the people we talk about are still looking at in non-production use cases, but that's going to change rapidly. As you start looking at your storage system and talking to your providers, you should definitely get their take and their story as to how they're going to be able to deal with container environments going forward. Right now, it's only about 20.6% in use, but again, that's going to be another area where the majority of people will have this for the next 2 years.
Well, I know as a software-defined company and kind of a next-gen storage platform at that point, we're definitely starting to see more and more of our customers that are looking at containers. And because of that, we've actually spent a good bit of time. And I think it's one of the benefits you get on the software-defined side versus the legacy, again, is we can look at that next-gen. So we've got things like being able to run our management within a container, or being able to use us as that persistent storage on the back end so your container still gets flexibility. All those drivers there, we already have in there because we're able to adopt that quicker than what you see on the legacy side of things. So, well, thank you, Henry. Let me jump into kind of specifically on how that ties into the DXA200N. And I think while we talked a little bit, and Bill had mentioned that you've got kind of an all-flash side where we can go with a smaller one, or even the hybrids, up to a really large-scale archive side of things. I think those two ends are really where we start seeing the most people that want to adopt quickly. Definitely onto the NFS storage and the block and the archive side of things on the back of an archive, whether it's a target as a tape replacement or whether it is just for compliance reasons. Now, you mentioned the cost that's gone up so much that people have to watch their budgets on compliance. When you start having to keep things for 7, 8, 10 years, depending on where you're at, it makes a difference. Or whether it's international and you've got to keep it within borders, keeping that archive data close, you can't do that if you don't have the flexibility to grow as you need and scale that way. So I think that's where you start to see it, as well as on the other side, on that all-flash. A lot of times all-flash doesn't mean that I need to be the absolute fastest storage array that has ever been created. It just means I need faster than what I have now. And getting there for things like those relational databases or into the virtual machines that you just want to get that extra performance, we see a lot there. The nice thing is having that hybrid, you can create it, you can design the solution as you need to cross those boundaries and give you a lot of different options within your storage solution. That being said, though, we talked a lot about ease of use and different flexibility that we've got to have. And I think the DXA200N gives you that combination of both the freedom to use the software side of things, all the way down to knowing exactly what your hardware can do. We do that both with our management system with Nexenta Fusion that will give you a really unified look of your storage solution with whatever's running NexentaStor at that point. Whether you're a VMware administrator and you want to use a vCenter plugin that gives you almost identical capabilities as that Fusion server, and then down even into the specific on the hardware side, with integration with the DX8200, and just like you would with your traditional 3650s, with your other traditional Lenovo systems, with Xperity, be able to see what your solution is doing. From there, though, that's great. We've got the options, but it's got to be easy to look at. And when you look at from the hardware side, you can do things like see your full rack design, where your firmware revision is at, whether you've got the right power and cooling setup, really what your whole environment, your whole data center can look like when you're looking at a Lenovo data center at that point. And the integration is already there for both the servers and the JBOD, so you can manage it. From there, you can also then, on the software side, though, see the hardware, monitor the hardware. If you notice, we've got things like, I will show you what the disk looks like. So if you need to blink a disk because hard drives fail, no matter what we all want, spinning disk fails at times, and we need to be able to alert for it, need to be able to know what it is easily and manage it. But the hardware is only half of it, obviously. The other half being the software side and how to manage that. And we do that through that single view management I was talking about, making it easy for that generalist to be able to go in and create both, and that maybe it's an NFS mount, and they realize, oh, I also need SMB. So it's as easy as almost a checkbox to do that. Adding in whether you need iSCSI or fiber channel as well, making it simple and easy to use. But once you've got it running, it doesn't matter if you can't tell what it's doing. So if you need to be able to see your system health, your capacity, all the utilization that you're doing, we created a nice integrated analytics view that gives you custom flexibility around whether it is seeing all your NFS things, bandwidth, throughput, latency, anything you need to see on your system, you're able to graph that nice and easy and get a good view of what's going on. Again, all about making it easy to see what your system is doing when you're using it, and know, hey, maybe I need to add a little more SSD. I'm pushing the performance. That flexibility then is there. So you're able to not only manage it, but also see what it's doing at the same time. So we know that we've got to have that ease of use. It's got to be flexible. It's got to be efficient to use. So kind of to wrap this up on here, as we're coming down the backstretch of the webinar here, I thought maybe Henry kind of give us a quick summary of the things that you've seen now, and kind of just wrap us up before we get the last few slides in here. Sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we're starting to look at these environments, as I mentioned earlier, you got to do more with less. Definitely look to use commodity hardware, appliances, and SDS when possible to mix and match what you need to do for your data load, and make sure you're managing things the right way and deploying quickly. Again, you need to have capacity optimization using technologies such as compression, snapshot cloning. A lot of these different technologies are in play to make sure you can squeeze out more effective capacity out of your systems. Scale-out architecture is also going to be a key thing. Nobody wants to manage 10 when you can manage 1. So that's where it becomes really important to be able to, when you start talking about that scale, going from a couple of terabytes all the way up to petabyte, that actually becomes valuable when you want to be able to just add capacity and not have to add multiple namespaces and other things that make things more complex. As Mike just mentioned in the last segment, ease of use is not a luxury item anymore. You got to have it, and you definitely have to have tighter integration with your applications and platforms like vCenter, because a lot of people are not necessarily going to want to open up extra tools if they don't have to use those. So definitely integration is going to be a key aspect to look at going forward. Another thing to look at there is also in the data protection side. Again, daily backups are not enough for most organizations, even for non-critical workloads. You need to be able to recover things in more on the scale of hours or potentially minutes. So definitely that's going to be a key aspect to look at when you're trying to evaluate your arrays. Also, what are the replication type capabilities? More and more people need to have DR, just in case you have, maybe it's a geographic description, or maybe it's a building or something like that. You need to make sure you have your data copied and duplicated, just in case something happens to your environment. Another area there we haven't really talked about much, but it's also going to be a key requirement, is integration with cloud. I don't think everything's going to go to public cloud, but public cloud could potentially be an area where you could store some backup data and other use cases like that. So it's definitely something we look at in terms of integration points going forward.
Thank you. I think Bill, I think we've got a little bit of information out here for sure on the DX8200N.
That's right. I mean, we just summarized basically the things that you need to be successful and address these issues. And at Lenovo, we've got the DX8200N powered by NexentaStor put together that provides just what you're looking for. So if you need more info, we've got some links here to get to it.
And everybody will get this after it if you've been signed up, so you'll be able to get these links. So we're not making you write these all down during the webinar. So I know actually that we've had quite a few questions come in. I've answered a few of them along the way, but I know we've got a few more here. So let me run through a couple of these questions with the guys, and we'll see where we're at. So I think we'll start with a couple for Henry here. So what do you think is holding back some of the 35% that haven't yet adopted SDS?
Yeah, to me, I think the reality is customers are still used to purchasing appliances. And I still think appliances are a good fit, especially if you're trying to start small and want to get immediate value. Appliances are probably going to be a good choice for that. Another area, if you're looking at more remote offices and more distributed environments, you may want to look at an appliance as well instead of trying to build something and sending out to them. So we definitely see it's going to be a mix and match between the two. What's more important to me is not appliances versus SDS or appliances versus software and hardware. It's really more about how we're making these things easier to manage, because that's going to be the important part for you going forward.
Thanks. I know, so Bill, here's one for you here. What's the vendor support like when working with multiple partners versus this all-in-one? And does Lenovo take that call to support the software, or does Nexenta handle that?
Great question. You know, with our product, it's much simpler than the, hey, who do you call? It's simple. You call Lenovo. Doesn't matter if it's software or hardware, we handle the support. You know, in other cases where you build it yourself, yeah, that question's very valid. Who do I call? Is it the hardware vendor? Is it my software provider? Is it my partner I bought it from? But here with the DX8200N, it's simple. You just call Lenovo, and that's where the support's coming from. And obviously, we work out all the details in the background to make sure you have a single point of contact for whatever you need.
So you mentioned that this can scale up to over 6 petabytes on it, but what happens if they need less? Say they're looking at a 50 terabyte is what we're seeing here. What's the question?
Yeah, so you don't have to start at 6 petabytes, that's for sure. What's great about the solution, you have the DX8200N nodes, and then you can simply start with 1 JBOD and populate it with as little storage as you need, and then scale as your capacity grows. So 50 terabytes, no problem. Start small and grow as you need.
So I know, so I'll touch on this next one. Actually, it's probably one easiest for me. So can I explain a bit more about the VMware plugin, its capabilities, and how that really integrates? So the VMware plugin is actually built on the web client, and it gives us just about all the same capability. Once you create your very basic hardware pools, you can do everything from deploying the NFS mounts, even really within VMware. So just like you would build an NFS data store, we'll take that process all the way through, so you don't have to look at the storage every time. I think one of the things that this is really complementary to is when you're looking at file services, it makes it easy to use and easy to present out those file services within VMware. Whether you're looking at it for just traditional VMware, I know we often will ask, well, why a vCenter plugin when things like they have vSAN? And vSAN gives you a different type solution on it. It's going to give you some different capabilities within it, but if you wanted to have file services on top of it, the software will work for that. If you want to have that back-end storage for VMware, that's really where you're looking at a good, solid enterprise storage solution on it. So now I know we've got one more here that has do I need a different product for all-flash, hybrid, or disk, and how does that work? Here,
let me take that one. So it's really simple. The DX8200N it's a single product that actually fits all of them. When you go to configure it, you're configuring your JBODs, what drives are in them. Just select the type of disk that you need. If you need a lot of SSD or a lot of spinning disk, your hybrid situation, you just select what you need for your application, and it's all one single product that manages it all with the NexentaStor software on it, and that's the DX8200N. So one product solves all the different configurations.
So I know there was one more question for Henry on it. There's been an uptick recently on one of your stats on storage migrations. That seems like, is that because of SDS? The question was, what's causing that shift?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a very interesting one for us as well, in terms of the number of people dealing with storage migrations went up a significant factor in the last year. To me, I think it's really a symbol of what's going on in the market. If you look at the market today, there's a lot of confusion, there's been a lot of disruption. A lot of that has been caused by the consolidation that's taking place. And also, I think a lot of this disruption, a lot of this migration is because people are realizing there are better offerings out there. People are looking at things like software-defined storage. They're potentially looking at other types of capabilities for reducing their costs. And with that in mind, it's not okay to just keep buying what they've been buying for years. The good thing about storage is storage decision cycles and storage acquisitions tend to happen in a 3 to 5 year basis. So things can change very quickly in terms of the ability to adopt these new technologies and be able to get to new service providers and new vendors if they're providing a better value.
Well, I know we're coming up on just about 10 of, and I always like to wrap this so it's not too long for everyone sitting here watching. So I know we've got a couple more questions we've hit. If we did not hit your question, we'll make sure we follow up with you just after the webinar. So first off, I want to thank you guys. Thank you both Bill and Henry for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And I think with that, we're going to probably wrap this up. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And make sure you take those links and check out the DX8200N and the Nexenta software.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.